open and welcome everybody to our meeting. I'll just do the welcome and acknowledgement of country. The Nala, I've got to try this. I did practice at home and Rachel's very good at it, so I was Hannah. Nala Kadich Wajak Mort Kayan Kada Nidja Walyala Buja were Dinang Jinang Wajak Kadijan Mer Knitting were Knitting Bula Yeye. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle Walyallup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. So we have an apology from Councillor Thompson and his deputy, Councillor Jones, is in attendance for North Ward. Are there any other? There's no other apologies, I don't believe. Yes, and we have Councillor Moughlin online. Councillor Lang is in attendance but is not a member of the committee. He's here for a particular item. Do we have any disclosures of interest by members?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Archibald. I have a disclosure, an impartiality interest disclosure for FPOL item 2206-10, being a member of the South Fremantle Football Club. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any others? No. Responses to previous questions taken on notice. We have the responses written in the agenda. Is there any discussion on that? No. Go to public question time. I don't believe we have any members of the public with us tonight, do we? No. Okay. Petitions. I don't believe there are any. Special deputations. Do we have any special? No, there are no special deputations. Do we have any presentations? There are none. Confirmation of the minutes. So I'll move the minutes of the FPOL meeting dated 11th of May 2022, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Moughlin. Elected member communication. Do we have any? There is none. We'll move on to the items. I think at the moment I will just start working our way through and then see where we get to. So I will move FPOL 22061, which is South Beach Public Facilities. Is there a seconder to the item? Seconded by the Mayor. And I do acknowledge that we have received an alternate or an amended motion from Councillor Sullivan. But I'll pass to the Mayor.
Based on the very short discussion that we had just before the meeting was started, I think given the feedback that we've had from Councillor Sullivan and from other councillors' queries, I'd like to move to defer this to the next meeting of FPOL so that we can have an IEM discussion on it more broadly.
It is seconded by Councillor Pemberton. I don't believe we discussed deferrals, do we? No. No. Unless there's any discussion, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Jones?
Councillor Lang is only here for item 7 to answer questions, so I just wonder if it's appropriate to put that first.
Yes, he did ask me about that, and I'm sorry I didn't pick up that. So if everybody's happy, we'll bring forward FPOL item 7, and it is the adoption of the City of Fremantle Cap Management Amendment local law. So I'll move the officer's recommendation just to open the debate, seconded by Councillor Jones, and perhaps I'll pass to Yes, this item does go on to council, so if we approve the officer's recommendation, it can be debated in 2 weeks. Okay, is there any discussion on this particular item? All those in favour? is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for prompting that. Yeah. I'll move item 22062, the proposed City of Fremantle Parking Amendment Local Law, seconded by the Mayor. Is there any discussion on this item? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That is also unanimous. I'll move FPOL 22063, the Plastic Free July Declaration, seconded by the Mayor. Is there any discussion, Councillor Pemberton?
I just have a question. Plastic Free July has been going on for some time, and I think the City of Fremantle has been involved for quite a bit longer than 2 years. Can we correct the record on that?
Sure.
I don't know at what point we started, probably when it started, but
Where does it say 2 years?
2020 apparently was I'm not sure if that's the first time we officially got involved, but
33. I thought it was 2018.
Perhaps I can speak to the intention of this, and we can look at, we don't usually amend reports, but I think it's a good point and certainly wouldn't be reflected in the declaration. So where this one has come from was, I guess, some feedback from Rebecca Prince-Ruiz, who has been obviously a local champion of this for a really, really long time now, and recognised in the national awards this year for that. And she pointed out that there are a number of other cities around the world who actually do a declaration of July as being plastic-free July, including New York City, which gained a whole lot of publicity and momentum, I guess, out of that declaration. And she felt it was an opportunity, particularly as the government's starting to phase out more plastic items, to kind of raise awareness of alternatives that are available in Fremantle. And because she's, her business or her not-for-profit is based here, she's got really good engagement with a number of businesses. And I think she felt that if council could effectively get behind the declaration, I'm in a weird position with my microphone, sorry people, that would be a real statement to other businesses to say, this is a real opportunity to get on board and trial some of the alternatives. So I think you'll see in the agenda there's reference to some of the things that are going on. There's certainly a cup scheme, a reusable cup scheme that we'll participate in, but a number of cafes have signed up to participate in. We're already talking to businesses like FOMO about what, if you're down here, you'll see that there's plenty of plastic litter on our lawn that comes from just next door. So rather than it being a punitive thing, it's really about the opportunity to embrace alternatives prior to, I guess, the regulations that will start to come in, and try and do that on a community-wide basis. So she approached us to see if we would do a declaration. My view is that it was consistent with a number of policies and initiatives that we already hold, and it's formalising effectively a position that we've already captured through, the number of listed activities that we already do. But this is just an opportunity to make a statement to our residents and to our businesses that we're there to support them with alternatives and to help a citywide approach to becoming less reliant on single-use plastics. So that's the context. Fully agree it's been longer than 2 years, so it's a much longer story from 2012 on, I think.
Thank you. I'll just make a comment that I remembered I'd read something, and the CEO just pointed it out too, that while we've said on page 39 that since 2020 the City of Fremantle has been participating in the Plastic Free July campaign, that on the next page, page 41, it says we successfully advocated the reduction of single-use plastics since 2012, and that we put together a plastic bag reduction law in 2017, and then from 1st of January 2019 it carried on. So that we have been involved with it for longer, but that's probably the correct, that we joined the Plastic Free July campaign at that time. Yeah, it can be checked, but that's probably the reason you were thinking that it was earlier. Councillor Pemberton, did you wish to speak? No.
Look, I'll only just support it wholeheartedly, and I guess partly around my point being that this has been an excellent initiative to come from our community, and I guess formally through the Western suburbs kind of waste management things. I think that's who Rebecca was working for at the time. But it has been an exceptional thing that's made really good change and really encapsulates a lot of the strategies that we've adopted, from the plastic bag stuff to our event waste management stuff and so on. And I think we do need to be absolutely hand in hand with it. So I really welcome this.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Kamada, who's indicated he wishes to speak, and also Councillor Mofflin. So we'll perhaps go to Councillor Kamada and then.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Archibald. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on this particular topic. In the industry that I work in Rock Lobster, we go to great lengths to reduce our plastic, and there's nothing worse than seeing plastic floating around in the ocean. And one of the big ones for me is, and I congratulate the City of Fremantle on their initiatives with the plastic shopping bags and discussion around coffee cups and all of these items. But the plastic bottles, drinking bottles, that you see floating around, and I just see it as pollution. All of this sort of thing is, to me, just pollution. I'd like to see at some point, wherever it starts, a real, and it's not going to be popular with everyone, but it's an area that I think really needs addressing, and that is plastic water bottles. And when we were kids, they just didn't exist, and there wasn't a problem, and we survived. And it baffles me why this has become such a big, a big problem. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Mofflin, over to you. We can't hear you. Still can't hear you. We're just looking into it. We're still trying to pick up the sound. Yep.
I will try.
Yes, we've got you.
Yes, you've got me. Yep. All right. Hello. Check 1 2 1 2.
All going.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I suppose I just wanted to add to some of the comments that had been made there, and particularly the drive that had come from the Fremantle community, which I feel has then culminated in the legislative change that the state has made, and coincides really with plastic-free July this year, 1st of July, the phasing out of single-use plastic. And I think our opportunity this year is really to continue that educative process for our community, and to understand the benefits. And I actually think, often when we get to this point, we go, oh, it's there. Everyone's across the line. When the state government has made that legislation, I don't think there's going to be an issue with our community. Our community is fine. I think it's broader than that, and people will be on board pretty quickly. So thanks to our community for driving it over many years.
Thank you. It is pretty remarkable what did happen. I mean, a global campaign that started from Fremantle. It's amazing. Okay, is there any further discussion? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's everybody. Thank you. It's unanimous. So we'll move on to FPOL item 4, the acceptance of tender. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Kamada. Is there any discussion? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. So we move to the items that require a council decision. The meeting procedures policy item 5. I will move that item, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. I believe Councillor Vucic has had a good look at it again and is happy with the policy as it stands, and we haven't yet heard from Councillor Sullivan, so this will go on to Council anyway. So is there any further discussion? Councillor Pemberton.
I had a super minor amendment, and that is in the additional docs. And yes, because I was happy with it when it came to the council last month. However, given that it was before us again, and I noticed some language that was a little bit unnecessarily complicated, and so I've proposed a motion that just removes the double negative.
Yep, that's true. Seconded by the Mayor. Is there any further discussion on that? We're putting the amendment. All those in favour? That's unanimous. It becomes the entire motion. Any further discussion? All those in favour of the whole motion? That is also unanimous. Thank you for that, Councillor Pemberton. Sorry, I've just spoken about the next item, complaint handling policy review. Sorry for the confusion. Didn't pay enough attention to the topic. So FPOL 6, I'll move that motion, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Is there any discussion on this one? This one does go to Council. All those in favour? The item is unanimous. We've done the CAT Management Amendment Law. We move to FPOL item 8. Westgate Mall upgrade of awnings. I'll move that item, seconded by the Mayor. Is there any discussion? All those in favour? The item is unanimous.
Sorry, just a
Sorry.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to staff in regards to the developer contribution, or sorry, the agreement and the MOU that existed there for the shared work on the Westgate Mall. And just to understand, reading the item, it spoke to there hadn't been any action from the developer on their side of the MOU, and I just wanted to know where that was and whether staff were pursuing that from them, having the conversations and the like. So if I could get a response, that would be good. And yeah, and just in terms of hearing staff when I'm online, unless there's a microphone, I won't be able to hear anything.
I'll pass it over to the Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you, through the chair. The base agreement with the developer was just simple reinstatement. So the Little Lane part of Westgate Mall was very dated. It had raised planter beds, drainage, lighting, and paving essentially. The developer was keen to explore options to improve that environment. And I don't know if you remember, at that time had suggested that we might look at engaging an architect together and coming up with a joint proposal to improve it rather than just reinstate it. So that on that basis, we developed an MOU that had the default position of reinstatement of not necessarily the planter beds, but certainly the paving, the lighting and the drainage. But it gave us the option to instead of reinstating, enhance it and come up with an improved scheme. It's been difficult to pull something together that really sort of hit the mark in terms of an enhanced scheme, and it's quite cost prohibitive as well. So some of the proposals that they started to look at did sort of leach over into the whole of Westgate Mall. And we were struggling to manage the costs between us, even with the notionally 320,000 as a joint project. And that was further compounded by the issues with the awnings and the rain penetration issues to the surrounding properties as well. So we got to a point where we agreed that we would move forward with them doing the reinstatement in the main areas, and we would then look at the options to address some of the other areas of Westgate Mall. Our priority was to try and resolve the issues with the awnings and the rain penetration, because we're getting quite a lot of complaints from the property owners. So hence our proposal to move forward on that. Having said that, we also do have a meeting with the developer, I think tomorrow morning, just to walk the site again to see if there are any other things that we could do to enhance the environment in terms of paving and possibly removing some of the other planter beds. So we're still talking to them, and we'll see what options we can develop. Hopefully, does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? No. All those in favour of the item? That is also unanimous. Thank you. Move to item 22069, the budget amendments. I'll move that item, seconded by the Mayor. Okay. Is there any discussion on the budget amendments? No?
Just quickly, just if I can.
Yes, please.
Just a question in regards to the Library Connect item, and noting that, yeah, it's an amendment, and we're sitting in June for the $40,000 to be allocated. Is this really an allocation for the calendar year or the financial year? How does it work if we're only putting it back into the budget now in June?
Through the chair, sorry, a bit loud there. In actual fact, this is the journal reallocation. We had it in the wrong budget, so it wasn't spent when it should have been spent earlier. We've re-journaled that to the correct account so it can be expended normally. And what we'll be doing from the next financial year is paying it out as a monthly allocation to St Patrick's Community Support Centre.
Okay, thanks. So up until now, it was just a lump sum that we
Yeah.
paid them. Is that the case?
Yeah, and it was in the wrong account, which is why it hadn't been expended. We've corrected that, and going forward, to make sure it doesn't happen again, we'll be paying it out as a monthly payment.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour of the item? That is unanimous. Thank you. We move to item 10, the proposed licence agreement with the South Fremantle Football Club. I'll move the motion that is before you, noting that we do have an amendment by Councillor Pemberton, but I'll move the officer's recommendation. Seconded by the Mayor. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Pemberton, would you like to speak on this? No, well, just generally, and you can move your amendment if you wish.
Sure. Look, I'm glad that we're getting this resolved, because obviously it's been something that's been kind of hanging over both organisations for some time. So I think it's a really positive step forward in getting clarity for each other. And yes, I will flag that there is an amendment that is about acknowledging the overall financial contribution that the city is making to the club, and I say that in absolute recognition of the amazing history of the club in this place and the ongoing contribution they make to our community. So it's not about begrudging the commitment that we are making. It's around recognising that this is a partnership we're entering into in goodwill, and recognising that they are a big part of our community and one that we want to keep here. So I'll move my amendment.
Move your amendment?
The one that was circulated
just recently.
The last one.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's about recognising that. So if I can introduce the amendment itself.
Yes.
Seconded by the Mayor. Thank you. So this amendment is about recognising the cumulative contribution that the city is willing to make as part of this licensing agreement, and the fact that it's comprised of a number of different factors, but overall the financial value to the club is quite significant, and we estimate that to be at least $350,000 a year as it currently stands. Obviously that might change a little bit over the years, and particularly given this is a 20 by 20 kind of agreement. But it is about recognising that this should be treated essentially as a sponsorship. There's a small component that is a cash sponsorship, but overall this is a significant financial contribution through in-kind and cash contributions. And, you know, we look forward to a really constructive partnership in the future with the club.
Certainly do. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Mofflin, did you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Sorry, I got a bit of feedback there. Yeah, just a question then on the proposed amendment and including the value of $350,000 in there, and whether that then locks the city in as a $350,000 contribution year on year as part of the agreement, or is it written in such a sense that there is flexibility that if we aren't meeting $350,000 of value in some shape or form, that we're not in breach of the license agreement?
Pass it to the CEO.
Graham's correct. Yep.
Through the chair, thank you. So the licence agreement proposes there's some financial contributions in several ways. One is the car parking contribution, which is revenue received, net revenue received from car parking revenue, then passed on to the club. That has been an item that's always been provided to the club in an historical sense, and even through the Fremantle Football Club agreement. There's a financial contribution in the city now taking care of the oval and adding value to the maintenance of the oval. And then there's the sponsorship component, which is the $50,000. The licence does allow for parking revenue to terminate at some point if parking terminates on the oval, and that's clear in the licence agreement. So at the moment, the initial phase is that this will be a approximate $350,000 package for the club, absolutely. The licence agreement allows for some of that to terminate at some point. It also allows for the fact that there'll be CPI increases on that, up to 5% maybe per annum. And it also allows for the fact that if we don't, say, earn $100,000 in parking revenue in any given year, in a net sense, they won't get the $100,000. I'll get whatever we've earned in a net sense. So this goes for a long time. There'll be lots of iterations, I expect. I say this, an agreement is usually something you deal with when you're in dispute with someone, not when things are going okay. So at any time, both parties can agree to amend this from time to time as well. So this particular amendment does just say that we note the financial contribution and actually make a change to a clause that represents how we want to be acknowledged through the sponsorship differently to what is provided in the attached document. So I don't see the noting actually sticking us to the 350. All the contribution is through the licence itself. Yep. Does that answer your question, Councillor Mofflin?
Great, thank you.
I was just going to ask, do you think we should just say, we're talking on the amendment here, do you think we should just say approximately 350? I mean, I'm only just, so that it's not a fixed number.
I contemplated that when I reread it later this afternoon as well. I mean, you could do. It's not really going to change the interpretation of the whole thing, but I think the application of it was really just to try and give some sort of rounding of the total contribution provided in the agreement, so there was some acknowledgement. So approximate doesn't take away from the 350, I don't believe.
Councillor Pemberton, are you happy to include that word? Yes. Yep. Now, I'm just aware that Councillor Kamada did declare an impartiality interest. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, though, and he stays in the chamber. Now, Councillor Kamada, you wish to speak as well?
Yeah, just briefly. 2 points. One that just came up was using the word currently for $350,000, just maybe another option, throwing it out there. But yeah, it's more on the amendment. I agree with all of it, and I agree 100% that it should be recognised, the sponsorship and support that the council put behind the South Fremantle Football Club. You know, and we all know how much they've contributed over so many years. The only one that I'm a little bit, I know that it's important to the club, and I know it's a controversial one, But the digital sign and the operating hours, I'm just wondering if that is something that needs to be negotiated, or if it's something, if will that be locked in once we agree to this? That's all. Thank you.
Through the chair, that'll be locked in through this agreement. The club have had that portion or that clause in the agreement since 2018, so I'm hoping they've read it a few times and understand the implications, and it's certainly something I've expressed verbally with the club.
Thank you. We have Councillor Vucci.
On? Yes, Councillor Pemberton has done a good job with this amendment. There's only one question I'd like to ask. Is there any, I look at the 20 plus an option, another 20, that's 40 years. I look at that in 2 generations. And I know it's really difficult, to predict 40 years ahead. Is there any way that we can make some provision where we can have a pause and another look at the agreement somewhere along that 20 year periods without breaking the agreement, but maybe a pause where we both come together and see how that agreement is working for us or for both parties?
I'll pass that to CEO.
We could shorten the term and have an expression in there where we talk about entering into a new agreement at a certain point. We could make the second 20-year period at our absolute discretion, and then the city could cancel it if they wanted to at the time. That would be a conversation I'd have to have with the club, though. So if we go back to the 2016 resolution where the club felt they still had 36 years of operation under the sublease with Fremantle Football Club, and at the time we said we'd try and honour that a little bit. So their interpretation is they'd like to get that tenure. You may be able to provide an amended clause in there that talked about changing or reviewing the financial contribution if that's what you're looking for in particular. Again, that's probably something we'd need to renegotiate with the club a little bit.
I think that would be good. I just think that that's a long time, and I think if it gives us a little bit of a wriggle room that another generation can pick it up, and if we can put that in, that's not a deal breaker. I'd like to see it in rather than not.
Yes, I mean, I'm just thinking this does come on down, it does go to council. So perhaps have that discussion and then you could move an amendment at council so that we've got it properly worded. And you could have a discussion then also about exactly what you're trying to achieve. So that probably would be a easier way to go. Okay, is there any further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Moughlin? Then we have the Mayor. Thank you.
I guess just on that point, I mean, I think the biggest prize here is the redevelopment of the Oval. So while this agreement is an agreement for now, redevelopment gives us an opportunity to really look at everything again. I would be highly surprised if we got to 20 years and hadn't had a conversation precipitated by redevelopment of the Oval. So I think, and I'm not foreshadowing debate necessarily at council, but I think we should keep our eye on that prize. It's not to jeopardise the relationship with the club now. They think they will be there for generations and generations, have been there for generations and generations, and we don't necessarily need to, put that on the line when the big win will be redevelopment and the I guess, for the CEO may want to comment that is a sort of hold point in the sense that we then change the nature of how we work with and relate to the club.
Yes, good point. Any further discussion? Councillor Pemberton, we're discussing the amendment, so
only
you're going to
nobody
close
else
the debate
wants to
on the
speak.
amendment? Yep. That's it?
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Look, I just did want to close on this item, and that was to speak very directly to the fact that what we've actually done here is integrate the sponsorship policy that we adopted not that long ago. So it is actually about just recognising that the overarching financial contribution is quite significant, and that should just be handled under our regular sponsorship policy. And the points that you see there are entirely from our sponsorship policy. And it's something that obviously I've been kind of working quite hard on in the last few years around creating some consistency with the support that we give with all kinds of organisations, events, activities, and so on. And that is very much my intent. So I'm really glad that there is some interest and support in this, in the sense that I think this is the approach we should take across the board with all organisations that we give, contribution to that has financial benefit, whether it be cash or in kind and so on, and that it needs to be treated as such. So that's my wholehearted intent in this.
Thank you. All right, the amendment has been put, seconded, and debate is closed. All those in favour? It is unanimous. Yes, so the CEO wishes to make a comment.
Just before you vote on the main item, I think I should probably point out for everyone's understanding that the West Australian Planning Commission and the Governor will need to approve this document as well. This isn't an as-of-right agreement between us and the club, and it is a precondition of the licence agreement. So the Governor and the WA Planning Commission will need to say yes to it first, and that's critical to the 10-year conversation.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the item as a whole? No. Councillor Moughlin?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to reiterate the Mayor's point about the agreement as a whole, and particularly to go to the point around the 20+20 element. I think the world will have changed significantly over the next 20 years, regardless of whether or not we get the redevelopment that we envisage today, and that both parties will be coming back and having a conversation nonetheless about what that relationship looks like. And I think it is very much about that relationship. And I know over the last couple of years that both council and city staff have done a really good job in growing that relationship between the club and the city. And if you like, both parties, both South Fremantle Football Club and the City of Fremantle, make such a significant contribution to the culture and identity of Fremantle as a whole. And I think this document and this agreement is something that we can use as a working document going forward, and one in which demonstrates goodwill on behalf of both parties and enables us to now look to go and have conversations with others to increase our chances of redeveloping Fremantle Oval and making that greater contribution in the long term too.
Yes, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, as amended? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. We have motions of which previous notice has been given. I don't believe we have any. There is no urgent business, I don't believe. There are no late items, and we move on to confidential business. So we will declare this particular part of the meeting. Well, I'll move vote to go into committee. Favour.